IVM.
Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach, and today with us for a second time we have Rico Racosky. And what we're going to be doing is today we're going to be talking about his philosophy of just two choices, but from a different perspective. As you guys know, we've been celebrating our rock bottom moments here on the podcast because I realized that rock bottom is something that all of us eventually go through and we must go through because this is a time that gives you the opportunity to rebuild, right? Because at rock bottom, you have a foundation that you can start building off from. But at rock bottom, it's also the time when we feel hopeless. It's a time when we feel that we have no choices. It's a time when we feel that, life is meaningless, there are no options, there's nothing to do. And I thought this would be a fantastic discussion because how would you start making choices in a time when you feel like you don't have a choice or you feel that this life has stagnated? So, Rico, welcome again to the Habit Coach podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
So, when we talk about rock bottoms, it's when our life has suddenly every single thing that was going well has disappeared. We feel that things can't get any worse, right? We've reached the stage when, our life has. So, for example, especially right now, I'll give you a few examples of what people are messaging and telling me about. During the pandemic, relationships are broken up, correct? Staying with each other for 7 months, you suddenly realize, oh my God, this is not where I want to be. And relationships are starting to change. People are losing their jobs. Financially, people are distraught. So there are so many different things that are getting people down to this stage of being at rock bottom. And it becomes difficult for people to then move and get out of bed in the morning, So it's this philosophy that I wanted to understand. What is your understanding of rock bottoms? And have you noticed this happening around you?
Yes, and several experiences come to mind. Of course, the most simple one for myself is just most recently just has to do with just pure overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with with the everything, the information flow and the uncertainty, and so for me, just initially to start off, I'd say is I do wake up. I don't know how many mornings, but more than half the week, I would say probably, or sometimes three, maybe 4 times a week, depending on the situation, with a million things to do, and a million what ifs, what if because of what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You look at like with your podcast, or I look at what I've invested with my my time and energies and stuff in terms of trying to get the message out to the world. And, is all of that financial investment just going to disappear? And then the next thought is, if it disappears, then, I sure could have used that money to, if things are going to get really bad. And then the mind just wants to run away with things.
Correct.
And I would tie that back to, that's a habit. Mm-hmm. That's a habit of thought that I'm learning to and that I'm learning to overcome, which is, those are options that could really, really go bad. But I learned to check myself by saying just two choices. And I know that sounds very simplistic. And for some people, it might be a challenge to take that is a simplistic thing. It's just that is the reality. So let's just say I might find myself saying with disbelief, just two choices. I'm going to make a number up, say 50 times, but eventually, it helps me to get back on the path to say, okay, the real situation it is, I can continue to spiral down.
Correct.
And really make it crazy or not. I've had several friends with some examples with family and stuff that are just what you described in terms of relationships. Some parents whose children have blindsided them with their treatment, and they're just like, how can this be? And we've talked it through with the Just Two Choices process. It's taken several hours sometimes but it always comes back to that comparison of what kind of new and better choice can we make now? Know that, we spent 2 hours talking about the story about what hasn't worked out. Now let's talk about what we can do to make it work out. Okay. And in this particular case, I got a phone call a few hours ago from this one person who said it is working out. And so it was just like, whew, thank goodness.
Thank God. Yeah. And it's so interesting because what you're saying is that very often, and like this is what we were talking about in the previous episode as well, you always do have a choice, no matter where you are, correct? Even when you are at rock bottom, when you feel that, the world around you has collapsed, you still have a choice. You can choose to take your next breath. You can choose to get out of the bed or not, correct? You can choose to shave or not. And you start making these tiny, tiny choices every single time. And you start understanding that you have that power within you again. Like we were talking about, the ability to make a choice is so important. It gives you that sense of empowerment. Instead of saying that the world is doing this to me, and that is unfortunately what we feel when we're at rock bottom, right? Like, everybody else is making the choices for me. But that is not necessarily true. You still have a choice to accept them or not.
And go ahead.
No, go on.
Well, I agree. It takes, I would say, that is part of the mission, the global mission of Just Two Choices, is to help bring people to that point where they can recognize it sooner rather than, I don't know what you would say in your language, but people just making all kinds of angry gestures and angry statements as their choice, as opposed to choosing to say there is another choice where we can try to turn this around. Yes. Some people are gonna take spend more time in the negativity it's a habit, including myself from other stuff I've had in the past. So that's part of my mission is to awaken people to that freedom, to help them move out of that depth of anger to make a different choice. And for some it happens a little bit sooner for some than it does for others. But it's still the same process. It's still just two choices. It's just some are going to spend more time. I wouldn't even use the word resist. It's just that the anger is that deep with them because perhaps, I'm glad you asked the question that way, because perhaps part of it is that they're not used to thinking of another process. You're used to thinking of another process. And maybe because of aviation, I'm used to thinking problem solution. Other people don't have the practice that we have at doing that. So it's a whole new world to them to think in terms of the mechanism of just two choices.
Yeah. What you're saying is that understanding that there are options that you can search for that you have not necessarily realized yet. Like we were talking about, can you learn to flip your thinking around? Can you learn to think about things more creatively and hence get more options in if you feel that you don't have any options or you don't have any choices? That is one way of doing it. But, Rico, I think that there is a fundamental thing here. You can choose to remain at rock bottom or choose not to remain at rock bottom. That itself is a choice, correct? Because for many people, rock bottom feels like that comforting blanket because that is their story and that is their identity. Oh, you don't know, for so many years I've been like this, right? So many years I've been, I don't have any money, I'm broke permanently. Now that has become their default identity. And breaking out of that identity itself again is a choice, right? And I'm thinking about this as we're talking. It's so important that, that one decision of saying enough is enough. This one decision saying I have a choice to say today it ends is still that choice. And guys, if you're listening to this, please understand. And if you're going through a rock bottom moment, you have that choice. Might as well make it today, right? How would you take people through that journey? How would you tell people, what kind of choice? How would you share that with them?
Well, and again, I hope it shows up. Just looking at the diagram.
Yep.
My approach is to say, there were numbers on there, choice 1 and choice 2. So I would let them talk through their choice 2 talk, and just it go on and on and on and on, and continue to spend all that time.
What's the difference between the choice 1 and the choice 2 thought?
Well, in the diagram,
okay.
Choice 1 represents the direction that you always want to go.
Okay, upwards.
What you want. You always want that upward vector, as you know, or trajectory.
Correct. Yes.
And choice 2 is the same old. So choice 1 is the new and better, and choice 2 is the same old. And so, I like to use the phrase in even with myself. I use this. I find myself getting stuck or feeling sorry for myself, and I say, Rico, you got to tell a new story. My choice 1 is to tell a new story. Now, we're all used to stories. We all grow up with stories. So after I would listen to the old story, and not that it's not valid. It's not that they haven't gone through the depths of financial loss, relationship loss, being deceit, or any of those other painful things. It's just that we know the old story, right? But you can't live a new life without telling a new story. And a new story is a choice. And so I would say, so how do we, if we were to tell a new story about this relationship, a new relationship, or a new financial situation, what might that sound like? Usually there's anger that still comes with it. Okay. Well, financially, maybe it sounds like, what if your new story said this, that you see you bringing income or a job, and so you start to ask them to add details to the new story details, and then we write it out. And then I'll say, as you write out 5 of these new story details for your choice 1, keep telling your new story, but think of it as a new story. The other one is your old. That's who you used to be. That's what used to happen to you. And now you have that, like in the last podcast we talked about, you have that contrast, that comparison that says, oh, you're right. And most people, including myself, you get to that point of going, yeah, I'm tired of the old story. I'm tired of that old story. So that's my fastest way of turning it around. And if you want to make it even faster, then you put the 2 words in front of it. You put 3 words in front of it. I choose to, actually 4 words. I choose to tell my new story. Because if you skip the word choose, you skip the ownership until you get used to the new system. You get used to just 2 choices thing, because it's easy for us to say, new story, old story, I don't care. Well, when you say, I choose to complain in my old story, now you're taking ownership, and I can't choose for anybody. They can't choose for me. I can't get into their world. They have to. They're the only ones who can choose for themselves, and that's why the phrase "I choose to tell my new story," and putting that "I choose to" in front of it. And every time they go into choosing to tell the old story, dude, you're on it. You got to own it, dude.
Correct.
At some point.
Superb, because the whole idea is rechanging that story in your mind. Like, for example, one aspect of my rock bottom was that I was in an abusive relationship. Now, when you're in an abusive relationship, you are meant to feel that you don't have choices, right? You're made to feel that you're the worst person on the planet, you're an idiot, you're this, you're that. But apart from that you don't have any choices. But you do have a choice of being in that relationship or not, of seeing that today my life changes or not. From tomorrow onwards, I will not be in an abusive relationship. You're changing your story. And while these decisions are hard, correct, and we're not saying that it's an easy thing, but the idea is that by breaking it down into just saying that you have 2 choices on whether you're here or you're not, you're making the decision process far simpler. Because otherwise what happens is people go into, I'm in a really abusive relationship, but if I come out, where will I stay? What will I be doing? Will I be doing? All these different parameters and thoughts processes come into your mind. And that's when you start feeling overwhelmed. When you break it down into just yes, no, it starts making sense.
You just reminded me, there's a business that I recently did some work with.
Mm-hmm.
And the executives in the business said a very similar thing to what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
We just, by knowing that we have just two choices, we boil this whole thing down to a very high level, yes or no, instead of getting all tied up, in all the details. And I understand what you're saying too about in the relationship. A lot of that, the psychological process, that's part of the game of, not only are you the worst person in the world, but that other person needs you to be the recipient of being the worst person in the world. And so when you say, I'm not the trash can anymore.
Yeah, correct.
That you're going to dump everything into the trash can on, because really, and so when that switch flips, there's where the freedom kicks in. You go, oh, I'm not the one who's going to be. We have that flippant thinking where you understand that you're actually serving a purpose for them, as opposed to you are the reason. No, you're the reason that, you or I stayed in an abusive relationship. We're the reason that the person still exists, because without us, they couldn't.
Yeah.
If we say no, they'll just find somebody else.
Correct. And their problem. But do you know about the drama triangle? So there's a drama triangle where there is an abuser, then there is a victim, and then there is a savior. Okay. So now we'll ignore the savior for the time being. But in order for an abuser to be an abuser, he needs a victim.
Right.
If you choose not to be a victim, and the word choice again here, there is no abuser. And and for all of us who are in abusive relationships, the choice is that of being a victim or taking ownership. So I am a victim of this circumstance, or I'm taking ownership and accepting the choice that I'm making. So that one single change of saying that I'm playing the victim mode here, or that I'm taking ownership of what has just happened, completely changes the paradigm. Because as soon as you take ownership, you can't be abused, because this abuser, what's he going to do? And I think that's when the change starts taking place.
Yeah,
let's have that choice. Yeah.
I like it. Let's add that other piece of power to it, which is, imagine now that go back to, in your memory, to that situation. Say, I choose to be the victim. I choose to be a victim. How does that feel? I choose not I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I choose. I'm choosing to be a victim.
Yes.
Now you can feel the vibrational shift. Like we talked about, your body's a tuning fork. Correct. You can feel it tune in a different way, right? And so I never thought of that. I choose to be. But what do I choose to do about it? Not I am. And that's the power of those words, I feel. And it takes it to a level, I think.
Yeah.
Of understanding quicker.
What to do? I'm in this kind of a situation. No. What to do? I choose to be in this situation. I have made a choice to be in this situation. And as soon as you realize that you made a choice to be in whatever situation you are, you suddenly feel empowered. Correct? You choose to right now be sitting at home saying that there are no opportunities available. No. The point is that start making a choice, start switching your thinking around. I choose to do whatever it takes till I get a job. Okay, good. Now you started making a choice in that direction. Okay. And
I'm going to ask you to continue with that. But let's say, tell me about your new story. Because if you're not in that relationship anymore, then tell me the new story that you, if you could, say maybe 5 or 6 sentences. I choose to tell a new story about this relationship. There might be I'm just trying to see if there are a couple of triggers where if you use the phrase, I choose to tell my new story. I choose to tell my new story where I'm going to find a new and better relationship. I choose to tell my new story where I'm going to find another place to live. What does that trigger? Any thoughts to help the listening audience?
Yeah.
Choose to tell a new story. Go ahead.
Correct. And it's so true. I'll tell you where it comes in from. When I was thinking about this, I said that if I'm not in this relationship, what is the kind of relationship that I do want to be in?
You choose to be in.
Choose to be in. Yeah, absolutely. What is the kind of relationship that I choose to be in? What are the relationships that are important for me? So as soon as I got out of that relationship, I said that I choose to have friends like this.
Yes.
And I said that I want friends like this. And I chose certain attributes to them. And I started finding them in life. So for me, some of my best friends were found when I did a trek to Everest Base Camp. and I'd never trekked before. I went completely by myself, and I made the best friends of my life. And how did that happen? Because in my mind, I chose to search for people with these kind of attributes, right? So it was a choice where, like you said, change your story. I had changed my story by saying, these are the kinds of people that I'm going to be looking for. Similarly for relationships, similarly for a job. Like what I'm doing with the podcasting, with the coaching was, and this happened coincidentally on that Everest Base Camp trek as well. But I said that I choose to now be in a job or choose to do something which can impact mankind or humanity, or I want to do something like that, because our family business was market research, consumer understanding, which is not where I see myself, making a change in the world. So this is how I started thinking about it. And I chose that different story. And you're so right. It's a story, and it's an identity shift that we have to start making.
It's a new story. Choose my new story. And again, the one download. This would be the one download with which is Americanized, Captain Hook you. You were hooked in a choice direction and telling your old story in that relationship. But it was the moment you started to tell your new story in the relationship.
Correct.
Everything changed. So this is a download, free download. You can hang someplace around the house after you cut it out. That people can say, "Oh, I'm choosing to backslide into my old story." Instead of tell my new story. It's interesting. The thought that went through my mind as I was listening was even finances. It goes back to the other podcast, which was we spend so much of our time talking about what we don't want. I don't have any money. 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 Hey, have I told you, Ashton, I don't have any money? Have I told you I don't have any money? Have I told you? And notice that you get a double choice, just two choices. You get a double benefit. The double benefit of just two choices is that the choice that you make, like a new story, you energize, right? The energy flows in that direction of that arrow, okay? The energy flows upward, right?
Correct.
But it can't flow downward at the same time, can it?
It can only go in one direction.
Great. And so when you energize one thing, you de-energize, I don't have any money. So when you energize, I choose to tell my new story of making fantastic friends. I choose to tell my new story of everywhere I go, I meet people who have a smile on their face. I choose to tell my new story that everybody I talk to, they're excited about what I'm doing. What happens? That energy de-energizes the old story. It doesn't even go there. So that's the double benefit of choosing what you want, because when you're going to energize something, choice is inevitable and it's unavoidable. And so you're going to choose, all of us, we're going to energize something. What are we going to give our life force to? And really, it's what are we choosing to give our life force to? Are we going to give it to this other person who's going to hold us, as what was the first one in the triangle at the top? There's victim,
abuser.
Yeah. We're going to hold the abuser, who is also going to at some point going to play savior and play back and forth as I interpret it. They're going to be abuser, savior. Oh, but because when you leave, now they're going to turn into the savior. Oh, you are but when they got you where they want you, so to speak, where the energy, there it is, where they are, what it is they don't know how to generate energy on their own. So they have to steal energy, my interpretation, by taking it from the victim, so to speak. So as long as the victim says, you're not going to suck the blood out of me like a vampire, I'm not going to let you do that anymore. They've got to find somewhere else that they have to do it.
Yes.
And so, whether it's finances or it's relationship or it's nutrition, where are you investing? Where are you choosing to have your energy flow?
So powerful. And choosing where your energy goes, even right now, you feel that you don't have any energy, correct? There is that little minuscule thing, and that little minuscule energy of whatever you can bring to the day, right? Like in a previous podcast that we had done where we were talking to a psychologist, she says, just wash your face. correct? When you're feeling so low that you just don't feel like doing anything, wash your face. All right.
Yeah.
That is one step that you've taken. That's a choice that you've made towards a direction. All right. Now you washed your face, shave. All right. Now you shave, put on a new, fresh pair of clothes. Start that slow, that's that momentum till you get to the point that you have enough energy to push it somewhere else and put it somewhere else and start creating that life that you can, that you want. Because, like Rico, you will understand this so well that whatever we can imagine is what we create. We can't create something that we don't imagine. And as soon as we feel that we don't have a choice, we can't create it because we can't even see the options that are there. So the first step is to figure out and start identifying your options, getting creative, learning that there is a whole world out there instead of just pigeonholing yourself and thinking about this one place that you're in. Oh, like I'll give you an example. So many of my clients will start off by saying, everything else is fine. It's just that, alcohol is a big problem. And then every single conversation will turn into alcohol is a big problem. Alcohol is a big problem. Alcohol is a big problem. And that's where the focus goes. And my entire job is to say, no, pull that focus, push it elsewhere. Let's focus on sleep instead. Let's focus on something else instead. Let's focus on something else instead. And what happens is that once we built up the energy in these other aspects of that person's life, the alcoholism falls off by itself because now the energy is redirected elsewhere.
Exactly. Yep, it's de-energized. You de-energize it. And, along those lines, that's why I like using the phrase new story because it's non-threatening. New story. Okay, tell me a new story. It's something that's lighthearted. It kind of takes the effort out of it.
Yeah.
So if you were to tell me a new story about a new relationship that was hot, that was going great, what would it sound like? And then we record it, and then I say, just write that down and start talking about it because you're in a relationship that's not that hot. Because you're choosing, as you were talking about, to direct your energy, in that direction. And when you direct your energy, and you're de-energizing the wonderful possibilities because you're giving all your energy to the negative possibilities. So tell me a story. God, just make it up. Just anything. Just start rambling, and to try to break through that concentrated effort on what has not worked. Very focused effort on
just make it up was such an important thing, right? Because we keep getting so rooted in our reality that we cannot think about what we're making up. And we need to start making up stories and then repeating it to ourselves over and over and over and over. That becomes a choice, of course, but that also empowers us to start thinking that way. Correct? If you just lost your job, and something I tell you, saying, for example, start your own business. Now, it might seem like something that is so dramatically different, but imagine if you could create the story of saying that you're a fantastic, successful entrepreneur. How would you go about doing that? Correct? And you repeat it to yourself, I'm going to start something new. I'm going to start something new. I'm going to start something new. And the very fact that you're saying, I'm going to start something new is now you're going to start observing and looking out for something that is new to do.
Yes.
And that starts the process going. So just create a story randomly, imagine it, and see where it goes with that.
Yeah,
it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and some people again they'll resist it and say, "Oh, it's just a story." Well, so's the story I've been listening to for the past 9 sessions that we've been together. I get the same old story about the alcohol. I get the same old story. So you shouldn't be surprised. We shouldn't be surprised that we're living our old story. I mean, we've had 9 sessions together, 10 sessions together, and we have made progress. I acknowledge that. Let's make more progress. How about next week when you come back, you tell me about what I want you to be looking for new story, just what you talked about. New story interactions about business, new story interactions about how people treat you. Because again, coming back, our bodies are tuning forks. Yeah. And if you're not changing your vibration, your attraction, I like the word magnetize. You're not magnetizing yourself. You can only magnetize yourself to the vibration you're at. And if it's a low self-esteem, a self-doubt vibration, look at your relationships, look at everything else. So anyway, I enjoy so much talking about this subject. Thank you.
No, it's so interesting, isn't it? And guys, to put this conversation in context, let's break it down this way, right? You're in rock bottom. First thing you can do is choose to tell yourself a new story. Correct? That is the starting point, right? Choose to tell yourself a new story. What would my perfect life be like? What can this life be like? What are the opportunities? What are the possibilities? Let's start thinking about it. Then the second thing is choose to take one tiny step in that direction every single day. Correct? Whether it is with regards to your health, whether it's regard to, like we were saying, washing your face, shaving, whether it's choosing to have, a salad or a donut, whatever it is, it's that one tiny choice that you need to make in that direction. And as these choices start growing, and like we say in our habits start compounding and changing, then you start playing with these new choices that suddenly pop up, because you're now seeing momentum growing. And like Rico, you say that every single day is filled with choices. It's jam packed with choices, right? Living is a choice. And the word that you'd used in the previous podcast was, I choose to do this. As soon as you say, I choose to do this, you're giving yourself the power to choose. And when we're at rock bottom, we feel that we are powerless. So this one sentence completely changes your life and can actually empower you to do these things. Did I sum this up well?
Oh, tremendously well. Yeah, it's as I hear you speak, it's about freedom, my friends. It's about, we are so free, we can choose to imprison ourselves.
Mm.
We are so free, we can choose to stay in a relationship that doesn't work. We are so free that we can choose to stay addicted to alcohol or whatever. We are so free, we can continue to choose to not have many finances. We have so much freedom, we can choose imprisonment, however you want to define that.
No, absolutely.
And so,
absolutely.
And we're the ones who have the keys, and the key is choice. I choose to use my understanding of finances to be abundant. I choose to know that there are exciting relationships out there waiting for me. If you don't choose to, then you don't know. I mean, it's almost ludicrous at how simple it is. It's almost ridiculous at how simple it is. But again, going back to the kids get it. 8 and 10-year-olds, they go, "Oh yeah, I get it." So why'd you make the other choice? I don't know. I mean, they know they did. Yeah. But adults go through 10 weeks of the same.
And it is about not BSing yourself, right, through the process. Not lying to yourself and accepting your own life. So I'll tell you something that happened a couple of days ago, right? Like, because I'm the habit coach, everybody believes that my habits are perfect, but there are days that are crap, right? There are days when I feel like everything's overwhelmed. And I remember this one day, just a couple of days back, where I had, I think, 3 or 4 clients back to back, and one of them really drained me. With working with clients, there's an energy exchange that takes place. And one of them towards the end really drained me. And I just did not feel like getting out of bed the next day. I was like, all right, no exercise. I choose to be lazy. And I choose to be lazy. I choose to binge watch Netflix. I choose that. But the reason why I did not beat myself up over it was that I chose those things, right? I did not let them slide into my life. And I know that these choices will change the day after. But I said, today, all right, I'm going to just I don't feel like doing anything. I'm going to put off my phone and that's it. And, we all have those days. And it's important that you can choose to do something about it, or you can choose not to, but learn that there's a choice there.
And that's the freedom.
That's the freedom. Yes. And not to feel guilty about it. I think feeling guilt is a choice as well, right?
Oh yeah.
Understanding guilt.
And so there, there's the freedom. I mean, think about if all of us, something meaningful to me, of course, is aviation. Just, to sit there and think, I never thought of doing this until later on in aviation, but to think if you would grow up from the very beginning and go, I choose to be an astronaut. Or I choose to, you pick a subject's favorite to you. I choose to be a phenomenal artist. I choose to be, a phenomenal musician. Imagine if we grew up with that strength where there was no doubt, because it's just a choice. Because the moment that we throw in or interject, and I grew up in a family with alcoholism, so so the moment we throw in I'd like to be an astronaut, but I had such a tough time growing up. The real sentence is, I choose to put a barrier between myself and my goal, and my barrier is that I grew up in an alcoholic family. I choose to make that a barrier to my dream. So imagine if you knew that you were making that choice. You were going like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want that. I choose not to say that that's going to be a barrier, because my dream's that important to me. How many people have grown up in tremendously difficult situations beyond something I could ever imagine. And, they're just living life to the fullest. It's because they didn't choose to allow that extremely challenging situation to come between them and whatever they wanted to be. But imagine if we were consciously aware. Can I share one other thought with you on this?
Yes, please.
My dream is, there's a thing called, you've probably heard of it. It's in psychologically. Have you heard of the 100th monkey?
No, tell me about that.
Well, supposedly after World War II, there was a study done out in the Pacific, and they call it the 100th monkey. They taught monkeys on one island to like wash a potato or to wash it. Okay. And before they ate it. This is the theory anyway. So after the 100th monkey washed this vegetable, whatever it was, monkeys on the other islands were doing the same thing. So the telepathic aspect of communicating was, hey, we learned this. They didn't have to swim over to do that. And so the representative of the 100th monkey is critical mass. So when 100 monkeys reach that critical mass, there's enough consciousness to take that idea somewhere else, which kind of explains why, you have certain inventions in different parts of the world very close to each other, without especially in the earlier years, without them knowing about how they figure it out. It's consciousness. So my critical mass dream is spiritually. They say that when 1/10 of 1% of a population gets it, understands something, there's a flash insight, and everybody gets it. So you could say Uber for taxi, when 1/10 of 1% of a city, when Uber was first starting out, got it. All of a sudden, everybody goes, "Oh yeah, Uber," or "Oh yeah, Apple." But it takes that 1/10 of 1%. So, assuming there's 8 billion people in the world, 1/10 of 1% of 8 billion is only 8 million. So when 8 million people get it for just two choices, critical mass, all of a sudden everybody goes, "Oh, I get it. Just two choices. Why am I making this other choice? No, why don't I make this choice one kind of a choice be my consistent choice?" And so that's kind of where I'm heading with just two choices. But it goes back to, imagine how many people, when they can help it out, they go, "Oh, I'm in an abusive relationship. I'm done. Oh, my finances aren't working. I need to choose for my finances to work." Bam. They're not energy draining anymore, like what you experienced. So,
correct.
Thoughts on that? So.
Superb. I love it. And how can we get this this movement going? How can people get in touch with you? How can people learn more about this? Can you please share that?
I wasn't setting the stage for that. That wasn't.
No, it's a beautiful segue, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. The website is just2choices.com with the number 2. And again, I think the easiest way to do that would be just get the free downloads. The first chapter of the book explains the whole thing. So the first chapter of the book as a part of the free download. And then these, we talked about it earlier, especially if you're in a tough situation in the Western, in America, everybody knows Walt Disney's Captain Hook. So how are you getting hooked into your old ways of doing things? You can you can download this and cut it out, and always have this reminder of just two choices for your new story. And then the other one is to think of it as every time you walk into a store and you see an open or a closed sign, you're open or you're closed. That's it. You're either open to a new and better relationship, a new and better nutrition, or new and better movement, or new and better productivity. Or you're not. You're choosing not to. And so you can hang that up. And by the way, when you hang it up, if you flip it around to the closed side, it walks you through flipping it around to the open side. So,
that's cute. It's so funny. So I think this week I did a podcast on pull the push door. So, we have these doors where there's a pull sign and a push sign on the other side, right? I had a very close family friend who said that I always pull the door that says push, right? What he's basically saying is that the door is still giving you those two choices, correct? Yeah. Right. And he was a fantastic entrepreneur, and his way of thinking was different. He was like, why should I be following the herd? Why should I be pulling? Is there something wrong in it? Let me see. Is it getting stuck somewhere? Does it work? So he always pushed the pull door, and then he did whatever, you had to do to get in. So I found it as a brilliant, habit. Like, can we just start something small? Push the pull door, see what happens, and then start growing from there. The whole idea was, don't follow the herd. Don't just take things what people say, but make your own choice for it.
Yeah, and there he is creating a whole new mindset, that works for him in a simple way that allows him to teach people stepping into possibilities.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. Super. Thank you so much, Rico, for this. I absolutely loved talking to you. And thank you so much for coming on the Habit Coach podcast. Guys, if you haven't heard the previous podcast, please go listen to it. That's when we deep dive into the just two choices philosophy. So please do check it out. And thank you so much.
It's an honor and a privilege.
Thank you. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Ashdin Doc on Twitter and Instagram. You can find lots more information on my website, awesome180.com, or check out different content on my YouTube channel called AWESOME180. That's Awesome 180.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. What a week we had this week. We had so much crossover, so many great guests. I don't even know where to start. Okay, yeah, I do know where to start. Let's start with Uncle Please Sit. Uncle Please Sit, Joel and Tushar had Hamsini Hariharan. Hamsini hosts a show called States of Anarchy with their network. She is a China expert, and they discussed the India-China relationship. Really fascinating conversation. Cyrus had two conversations this week instead of our normal Thursday Cock and Bull. Great conversations, both of them. We'll be back with our regular Cock and Bull next week. But this week, you could definitely check out the conversation he had with Varun Grover. Really fascinating stuff. And Nikhil Taneja, who was the founder of Yuva and the creative director for the India Film Project Festival, which is going on this weekend. He was on the show as well. Cyrus was also on Advertising is Dead this weekend with Varun Dugirala. Cyrus and Varun discussed Cyrus's intent on randomness. Ranveer Brar guested on Gauri Devi Dayal show. This rounds on me. Another amazing conversation over there. Priyanka Khimani, one of the best IP lawyers in this country, was on Storytellers and Storysellers for a fascinating conversation. Definitely do check that out. And finally, I wanted to congratulate Zarina Poonawala for her 100th episode. She had Ashish Vidyarthi as a guest on that. If you have not been listening to the Empowering series, please do. It's one of the great shows out there. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
Whether you're an established sports person or a budding one, or simply a sports enthusiast, join us, Tanvi and Shlok.
We are two passionate pro badminton players talking policy, mindset and everything sport.
So tune in to The Millennial Athlete every Monday.
Only on the IVM Podcast Network.
Trust us, it's gonna be lit.